Good evening, folks. It's Carl Marais here, and this is the second session of our catch-up sessions. I hope you can hear me. If I can just get a thumbs up. If you look at the top, there's a thing that says react. If I can just get a thumbs up that you can hear me. Thank you very much, Kiara. This is our second catch-up session. And in this session, I'm going to look at the second learning unit. It's chapter 2 in Back to Basics, your textbook. And this one, we're talking about entrepreneurship. So in the first semester, we do just this chapter of entrepreneurship, just to situate entrepreneurship within the bigger picture of business management. From next semester and onwards until the second semester of your third year, you will have entrepreneurship as a subject. The reason why we don't do entrepreneurship as a subject in the first semester, it's more important to get you situated within the bigger business world so that you understand the basics of business before we do the deep dive into the entrepreneurship. Those are the objectives, or the so-called learning unit outcomes. These you'll also find in your module guide. And this is what you need to be able to, at the end of the session, or at the end of the time you've spent with your work and that you've interacted with the work, you should be able to do this. For example, identify the skills and characteristics of an entrepreneur is objective number 4. And that could be asked, for example, in the exam. They won't ask you to identify the skills and characteristics of an entrepreneur, but the question would typically be something like, entrepreneurs have got certain skills and characteristics. If you look at the case study, which of these skills or characteristics of an entrepreneur is John displaying? Or they could take one of the characteristics like creativity and say, creativity is one of the characteristics of an entrepreneur. Please discuss this characteristic by using examples. Then you've got to tell them what it means, what creativity is, what it means in the context of entrepreneurship, and you've got to give some examples of how and where an entrepreneur has been creative. So it's always a good idea to have a look at these right at the beginning before you start a chapter or learning unit, and then also right at the end. It's very important to go back to them and say to yourself, do I tick these 8 boxes? Am I doing what these or what this learning unit has expected me to be able to master? Okay, let's get into it right away. So South Africa is seen as a developing country. If you look at it in the greater context of the world, many would argue it is a developed country. But when you start comparing our development with countries such as Europe, or countries such as those in Europe isn't the country, then we find that we still have a long ways to go. Just looking, for example, at proper public transport is a field that we can still develop quite a lot in. But because we are a developing country, there are a lot of opportunities, because a lot of the opportunities that there are have not been taken up by people yet. So it is possible for you as an entrepreneur to seize these opportunities, and you could then really give it a go. There's a couple of things that you need to have. You need to have an entrepreneurial mindset. So you need to do the things that we're going to discuss in this chapter, that we talk about what do entrepreneurs do. You need a decent business plan. We'll show you what a business plan looks like. You need to understand how a business starts up, grows, and then scales the business. If you've got these things together, it's very possible to be a highly successful entrepreneur within South Africa. Unfortunately, it's one of the things that we're short. We don't have enough entrepreneurs in South Africa. We do these entrepreneurial days at school, and I always jokingly referring to them as a redistribution of pocket money, because typically what happens is it's one day. Mommy and daddy give you money. You buy a couple of things, let's say sweets or chocolates or ice cream or whatever the case is. You sell them. and you take the money that you've got for that, and you've got extra pocket money for that week. That's not an entrepreneurial venture. There are entrepreneurial things that happen. That's a once-off thing at a festival or some event. But people that do that typically do that at many festivals or many events. It's not just a once-off thing. And they take the money that they make at one festival, and they take their little bit of profit or little bit of salary or whatever they're taking for themselves, and they put the rest of the money aside. And that money is the seed money for next time. It's not new money that they get from somewhere every time there's a festival. They don't go to the bank and make a loan every time. They put their money away. And overall, we don't have enough entrepreneurs in South Africa. That's why a program like this program, Your Become an Entrepreneurship, is such an important program for the country, because entrepreneurs play a very, very important role within the economy. They discover business opportunities. They actively seek and find these business opportunities, which then creates a new business. To do this, they think differently to other people. So they don't just look at something on the surface. They say, how can I make this a business? What is the opportunity here? How can I make money out of this thing that's busy happening? And that's innovative. And they build that innovation and they grow it into something big. They are able to sell the idea, right? And they sell the ideas to investors, to banks, to people that they want to get on board to help them. In part, they fund the capital, so they typically put some of their own money into the idea. They group resources. Remember, an entrepreneur can't do much if they don't have resources. Yes, they can start small and build on that, but they need resources. They need people. They need machinery. They need raw materials. They need a building or a place to work from. And whether that place is a very expensive office building that they've rented, or it's mommy and daddy's garage, doesn't really matter. But they need those resources. Part of what then happens when they start these businesses and when they run these businesses, it brings about change in society. So they are responsible for society moving forward to society changing. And they motivate this process of change by doing what they do. What are the skills and characteristics? Now, I mentioned the skills and characteristics earlier of entrepreneurs, and that's one of the key things that you need to understand. What does an entrepreneur look like? So, firstly, they show commitment and passion. If you are selling an idea, if you're going to people that you want to either invest in your company, in your startup, or you are speaking to people that you might require to work for you. So you might need certain expertise. Say, for instance, you've got this brilliant idea for an app. Now you need to bring people in that can actually write the app. These days, more and more people, anybody can write an app because you can use AI, but bear with me for the argument's sake. So now you need to get these people to come work for you. They need to see your passion, your commitment to the idea. If you're going to say, okay, guys, I want you to do this, that, and the other, and I'll see you next week. I've still got a real job on the side. Yeah, I'm going to go do my real job. You guys carrying on and run our new venture. Then people are going to start saying, but hang on. Does this person actually believe in this? Have they got commitment to this? Or is this just a sideline and it's always going to be a sideline for them? And then what's going to happen to me? Or the bank will say, well, if this is just a sideline, are you really going to achieve the full potential of the business? And are you then going to be able to pay back the loan that you want from us? Because if you're not going to commit yourself to the business, we're not committing our funds to the business. Then an entrepreneur typically gets along well with human beings. Now, that's a contentious one. If you read a bit about a person such as Steve Jobs, you will notice that he wasn't always the best person to get along with people. But if you take another big entrepreneur like Richard Branson, he's known for it, that he gets along well with people, he communicates easily, and so on. The reason why they say an entrepreneur needs to have good human relations is quite simple. You're going to rely on people, whether it's people that are working for you, whether it is your bigger network of connections and people that can help you do things, whether it is the people that are going to buy your products. But entrepreneurs in virtually any field of entrepreneurship or any field of business, where you want to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have to speak to people and get along well with people. And if you struggle to do that, you're probably going to struggle to do business with them. And that's why they say they have to have good human relations. Is determined. You have a lot of setbacks. Entrepreneurs have an amazing ability to bounce back and decide, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to try something new. I spoke about Branson earlier. If you go look at Richard Branson's, the businesses that he started, there's these big ones like Virgin Cola that's failed spectacularly within something like 6 months. But there's a lot of other businesses that we don't really hear about. And we don't really know of these businesses because they failed very, very early on. But yet he's always comes back, always tries something else, tries something new, always comes up with a new idea. And that not only speaks to their determination of getting over setbacks, but also looks at innovation, right? So entrepreneurs are very innovative. And they seek opportunities and they figure out opportunities of things that they can do. Elon Musk, when people speak about Elon Musk, they speak about things like Starlink, Tesla, these things. They're the big things. But people don't talk about the tunnel company that he has, that literally is a company that started off making tunnels for cables and is now got their first big contract to make a real big tunnel. And that's being innovative, seeing a gap, saying, but there must be an easier, cheaper way to do this. There must be an alternative way to do this. And then coming up with the alternative way and seeing it through. Now we're back at the determination, taking that innovative idea and seeing it through to an actual business and actual operation. Is a leader. Now, obviously, the entrepreneur is leading a team of people, and leaders lead from the front. So they must take that business and take the business forward and show people how this business works, show people how this business is a workable business, and be able to show people what to do, how to do it, when to do it. When I had my own Ida paint factory, and we used to sometimes bring out new products or try new formulations of products and so on, I was always the one that did that. The first time we make a product, I'd made the product. The first time we tried something new, I tried something new. The first time we had to do a dirty job, I'll never forget, one of the most horrible jobs in the factory was using the polymer that we used had to get moved up one story into a big tank at the top there. And I didn't have money to buy it's a very expensive pump. So it had to be manually carried up to the top. And I used to do that on a Friday afternoon. I'd say to the other guys, okay, guys, lunchtime, it's Friday, we can knock off. And then I would carry it to the top. And then they'd come in on a Monday and they'd say, but that tank, what up, where's the, how? And I said, no, I did it on Friday. And some of the guys said, no, come on. We'll come help you on Friday. And then they actually, for the first time, saw what a messy job it is and how the polymers are very, the polymer we used is a very sticky thing and it dries on your skin and it's like a plastic. It doesn't wash off easily. You've got to basically rub it off. And then only did they realize, but I was doing that. But my idea with doing that is I wanted them to know that I'm as committed and I also do the dirty work, because that's what a leader does. A leader must be able to show people that they're not up there in the sky high above everybody and they rule down. They get their hands dirty. an entrepreneur has a need for independence and control. That is why many people end up in entrepreneurial ventures and start their own businesses, is because they want to be, we talk about an external and an internal locus of control. An external locus of control means you believe things are predetermined and things happen to you. Internal locus of control, you're the captain of your own ship. You determine what you're going to do, and whatever your actions are determines what happens to you in the future. And that's typically an entrepreneurial trait, because they are these independent people, and they want to be in control of their own destiny. This plays against them as well. So you find many cases that entrepreneurs don't delegate early enough in the entrepreneurial journey, or they don't appoint people early enough. So if you've got a labor intensive type of setup, it might be important to early on get somebody in that can do your HR, that can play the HR role, or to get somebody in, for example, to do your finances. But then what many entrepreneurs do, they would get a financial person, but they won't give the financial person financial powers. So they still have to sign off on all the payments. They still have to check and say, okay, we're going to buy it from this person. And then actually what they're doing is they're holding the business back, because they want that control. So it sometimes causes problems for them as well. Willing to take calculated risks. And this is something that I always stress with my first year students. We see entrepreneurship as these guys that take risks. They take these massive risks. No, it's a calculated risk. If you want to take massive risks, go to the casino and put all your money on red. Simple as that. There's a massive risk if you want a massive risk. Calculated risks is where you say to yourself, this is the opportunity, this is the reward I can get if I use this opportunity, this is the risk. Is the reward I can get and the risk, does those two things balance out? Am I prepared to risk, and how much and what am I prepared to risk to be able to seize this opportunity and to make some money out of this opportunity? And then they are creative. So innovative is thinking of new things. Creative is thinking about new ways of doing things. So that the innovation and creative part play, they on both sides. And those are the, 8 characteristics or skills, if you want to, of an entrepreneur. So they can ask you to describe the 8, but they're more likely to take 2 or 3 and ask you a detailed question about that, or ask you to, in a case study, identify and then discuss. And so I just want to do something with this question quickly. Let's, for example, say they ask this question. Now, they typically won't ask more than a 10, 15 mark question in a test, and then in an exam, probably 15 to 20 marks at the first year level. From second year, it'll go up to about 30 marks. But let's, for example, say they ask this question. I want to show you different ways in which they can ask this question. They can ask, what are the 8 skills and characteristics of an entrepreneur? And that's 8 marks. And you'll write these 8 things down and walk away from it. They can ask, discuss the 8 skills of an entrepreneur. Then what you'll do is you'll write on shows commitment and passion, and then you'll write a sentence or 2 on what does commitment and passion mean. And that'll be a 16-mark question. Then for 8 more, so for 24 marks, they can say, discuss the skills and characteristics of an entrepreneur and illustrate it with an example, or use examples in your discussion. So then you're going to write this down, write a sentence or 2 of it, and give a practical example of that skill or characteristic. See how the marks build up on each other as the question becomes more complex. Also, please, just as a rule of thumb, keep in mind that if they ask a 5-mark question, you should typically write about 10 lines. If they ask a 10-line question, you should write at least 20 lines. or 10 mark question, sorry, you should write at least 20 lines. So at least 2 lines per mark is a safe bet to go for, unless they say list or name. And they're asking you to name 4 things for 4 marks or list 4 things for 4 marks. Then you simply have to write down the thing. But if they asking anything about discuss, describe, explain, anything like that, you should be working at a minimum of 2 lines per mark. So yeah, that just gives you a sense of what to expect when we start assessing you. Okay, the entrepreneurial process. So entrepreneurship is something that where we identify a possible way of making money or an opportunity in the market, and we take that idea and we develop that idea. And we grow the idea until such time where we can actually take the idea and implement it and make that a successful business. But there's a process how we get that from coming up with an idea until we at such time where we actually have a business. And this is called the entrepreneurial process. There's 6 steps in the process. So there we go. Those are the 6 steps. Sorry, I'll flash by there quickly. That's figure 2.1 in your textbook. So we start off, and we're going to talk through all of this in detail now. Excuse me. So the first thing is that the idea generation, coming up with the idea. The second one is evaluating the opportunities. Then we put a business plan together. Then we identify what resources we need. And that's almost part of the business plan. We form the business. We actually start the business and start to run the business. And then we grow the business and we do what's called harvesting. So harvesting is when we decide, okay, I've grown the business enough. I'm now getting out of the business. I'm harvesting the profits that this business would generate when I sell it. But okay, so those are the 6 steps. So for starters, when you're studying this, study the 6 steps. Know this thing, then carry on and know the detail. So first thing is the generation of the idea. Now, we see this cartoon with this ping light bulb going on. That's not how it works. It's very seldom that it's a ping light bulb idea. And even when it is that light bulb idea, that's not the complete idea. That's the origin of the idea. Now you take that idea and you start thinking through it and thinking, yes, but how does this work? So I've recently, I stay quite a while out of town, and I travel 2 stretches of road to work. I travel a 50-kilometer stretch, and then there's another town, and then I travel a 70-kilometer stretch. Now, on the 50-kilometer stretch, there's nothing. There's farms, and where I stay is a pretty small town, and the next real town is another 40 k's on. So that's a 90-kilometer stretch with only one smallish town in it if you take the whole road. On the 70-kilometer stretch, the 50-kilometer stretch, I travel to the next big town. A farmer has recently opened a food car, food van that serves coffee and biscuits and small items. And this is done on the entrance to his farm. He's put on some tables and chairs there. It's called Under the Trees. There's a large row of blue gum trees. And he has, or she has, installed this food truck that they pull down from the house every day. It's like a trailer. And it stands there Tuesdays through Saturdays. Now, if you think about that as an idea, the farmer and his wife might have sat down there, and the wife had said, you know what, I think I've had this idea last night. We should start a little place where we serve coffee and tea and biscuits. That's the light bulb moment. But now to take that idea all the way through and to say, is there a gap in the market? Well, in their case, the gap is created by the distance of road where there's nothing on it, and there's no other stalls, nothing on that road. But now they've got to think through this idea further, and they've got to say, oh, but listen here, how are we going to do this? There's no water down there. There's nothing down there. Oh, but then let's not build a building. That's too expensive. Let's just get a food truck. It's going to be cheaper. And if this doesn't work out, maybe we can use the truck to go to different festivals and so on. Maybe they have a daughter that's leaving school or a son that's leaving school, and the son and daughter might take this business and run it further. So there's a whole lot of things, but the fact of the matter is the idea of opening a place to serve coffee, that's the idea generated part. Now the rest of the thinking process of taking this idea and generating it into a business takes place. So there's a whole thinking process until you've really got a solid idea before we can move on to the next step. Just keep in mind the idea that you have may not be something new. It may simply be there's lots of food trucks, but there isn't any food trucks on this road, and this idea is now another something that other people have done, but they're taking it and they're modifying this idea. So sometimes it's an already existing idea that the person's just modifying, or they're just taking and adapting for their purposes, for their market, for their situation. So the second step is evaluate the opportunities. So sometimes you can have a really good idea, but an idea isn't an investment. You can't invest in an idea. So you need to think about what are consumers going to do about it? What are people going to think about it? So on our food truck idea, you might want to speak to some of the people that travel this road and ask them, do you think this is needed? Is this something that you will support? There's a standard set of questions. Are there enough attractive markets out there to purchase the product? In other words, food truck idea, and I'm going to go with the food truck idea through this whole section of the work. How many cars travel by here? Where do they normally stop for coffee? How far are they traveling? Would they only want coffee? Is the suggested solution to the idea or opportunity workable from both the market perspective and the technological perspective? So do I need some heavy technological knowledge to execute this idea? Is this an app that I need to write? Or is this something, now in their case, they need a food truck, or in their case, a food trailer. And farmers are quite creative people. They probably said, you know what? I can build that from scratch. I don't need to get anybody else in, and I don't have to buy it. We'll just build it on the farm. I've got some old metal lying around. I can weld up a chassis and a trailer. It's never going to go on the main road. And if you have to later decide to go on the main road, I'll build it in such a manner that we can eventually have it licensed. And so we're just going to build it. So from the technological aspect, for them, it's not a big issue. The market perspective, they checked how many cars travel by, and then they decided whether it's worth it or not. Are there competitors? And what puts your product in an advantage in the market? So there's competitors because there is at the big town. There's obviously coffee shops and garages and stuff people can stop. The small town, and this is almost perfectly between the two, the small town has got a couple of restaurants and so on, but the small town hasn't got a place where you can stop, grab a cup, like a Vida type of setup, where you can grab a cup of coffee and go. You need to sit down in a restaurant environment, order a cup of coffee that's brought to your table, say, no, I'm not going to eat anything, and then drink your cup of coffee and then go pay and then go back on the road. Well, this place is a place where you can just stop, grab a cup of coffee, get back in your car and go, or you can sit there if you want to under the trees and have a relaxing time on your road trip. So for them, there's no real competitors, but their location puts their product at an advantage. Do you have passionate and committed team to drive this idea or opportunity into the market? So depending on your idea, you might need quite a large team to mobilize this and get this operational. In their case, They needed the guy that built the trailer, who's probably the farmer or the foreman, and they need somebody to man it. So they could either get one of the local people that are staying on the farm to man it, who hasn't got a job, whose husband or wife is working on the farm, or they could man it themselves. The farmer's wife, for example, could man it. Or I spoke about it, maybe they have a son or a daughter that's looking for a business. Maybe that's why they started it, because they have a son or daughter that's not finding a job and is not going to work on or doesn't want to farm. So in their case, that's not really a problem. And what are the opportunities that will arise from this project, and how will it outweigh the risks of the project? Now, for them, there's very little opportunity that can arise. It's not a big business, a scalable business. They might sell a heck of a lot of coffee and biscuits, but that's where it's going to stay. The only way that they could possibly scale it is to say, well, this works. Let's see which other places we can do this. Or this works really well. Why don't we do a stall where we serve more than coffee and tea? We're almost going to a restaurant now, and we can sell local produce. And this could be the stop on the road, on this piece of road that everybody knows about, and so on. Me that travels the road quite regularly and that knows the area, I don't think that'll work here. I don't think the road is busy enough. So I personally don't think that's an idea. So as long as you know when you start with this idea that this is a limited opportunity, however, although it's limited, it still has enough potential to generate enough income that it is worth my while to do this idea. Then it's still a viable idea, then it's still something you want to do. But that is your evaluation of opportunities, how you want to test if the opportunity is actually worthwhile doing. So step 3 is the writing of the business plan. So you're now going to commit your idea to paper, right? You're actually going to write this down. And this is the details of the process of what you're going to do to take this idea. Remember, at this stage, we just got pie in the sky. We don't have anything physically. You're going to take this idea and you're going to commit it to paper. You're going to write it down, and you're going to write it down in detail. Excuse me. And it's important to go into quite a lot of detail, because this is the important part of the thinking process of the business. You're going to think through all the scenarios, and by physically writing it down, you committing your thoughts to paper, and it's a step more than just thinking random thoughts. That plan, that document that you've written, is your business plan. This is the thing that you can take to the bank or to investors and say to them, this is the plan how I'm going to turn this idea that I have, into a business. A couple of things to remember about that. You shouldn't say, I have a business plan, it's here in my head. Write it down. Because when you're running the business and something happens and you've got to make decisions, you've got to ask yourself, what did I think when I started the business I was going to do when we get to this juncture? Go look in your business plan. It's in the business plan. It should be there. You should have anticipated it, and you should have written it in the business plan. Be careful. The business plan is not law. Sometimes people stick to the business plan long after they should have adapted the business plan, and the business fails because they continue to insist on doing what they wrote in the business plan, even though it's not working. You should change the business plan then, and change the idea, and let it morph into something that will work, because otherwise you'll lose the business. And then lastly, do not get, and I used to do this at one stage, I used to write business plans for people. I don't do it anymore, and I'll tell you why I don't do it anymore, because I don't think it's ethical anymore. Because if I write your business plan for you, you pay me 10,000 rands, I'll write the business plan. No problem. I know your business, you don't know your business. And it's more important that you know your business than I know your business. Therefore, you write your business plan. It's fine to write the business plan and then speak to a consultant and say to a person, look, let's talk through my business plan. I would like an independent opinion, whether you think this is a workable idea or not, and whether what you think I've put into the business plan, whether we can actually, whether that's legitimate, whether that is something that should be in the business plan or not. But paying a consultant to write a business plan is paying somebody to understand your business better than you do. We will look at business plans later on and the actual content of the business plan. Identify the resources. What is it that you need to get this business up and running? Our friend down the road needed a trailer, needed cups, needed something to boil water in, needed a couple of fridges built in, so he needed some form of electricity, and that's the resources that they need. But you'll need tangible and intangible resources, so tangible things like the buildings, raw materials, and so on. Intangible resources are things like your branding, your trademarks, and all of these type of things. You've got to think of a name, you've got to register your name so somebody else doesn't steal a name, and so on. But you need to identify the resources, and importantly, you need to figure out where are you going to get the resources from. Now it's formatting and managing the business. Now we've got to the point where now we've got to do something. So now we start the business. Now we actually activate the business, and we're taking our business plan and saying, okay, on page 1, what did we say we're doing? Page 2, what are we doing? And now you do these things. Now you start running this. You get your organizational structure set up, you get your people hired in, and now you run the business. And hopefully money is rolling in and money is rolling into your bank account, and everything's going really well. As everything's going well, you're looking at the business and you're seeing how it's growing, and you're looking at what are the opportunities to expand. Our best opportunity to expand is not to get a second trailer and place it stationary somewhere. We're going to get an actual food truck, and we're going to drive that truck under the same name, our same coffee under the trees or whatever it's called. Under that same name, we're going to go to all the various festivals that's held here and all the summer markets and all of these things. I mean, you go there and we're going to sell coffee and biscuits over there. That's how we're going to expand this business. And you've got to look at how you're expanding the economy, how you're putting more money in your pocket, and how does this remain a competitive and sustainable and profitable business. And then you might want to start thinking on exit plans. You might start wanting to say, well, what am I going to do to exit this business? Now, in our example, they're probably never going to exit that business. If it's successful, they're going to keep it. And whoever's, when they get older and they want to retire from the farm, the son or the daughter or whoever's going to take over the farm will probably take over that business as well and run that business. But because of the location and the way the business is set up, you can't exactly sell the business out. And that's another limiting factor of that business. But if you've got a normal shop out there or something like that, you could quite easily sell the business to somebody else and say, there's the business, lock, stock and barrel. It's your business. Cheers, I'm out of here. I'm going to retire. Or I'm going to use the capital that I've made here to start a new business. I know a guy that stays in a village along the coast here, and he is now got it must be probably about his 5th restaurant that is opened there. And what he does with the restaurants, he runs them for 3 or 4 years. They all very themed, and a very typical specific type of cuisine is served. He builds that restaurant up, he runs it for 4 or 5 years, he sells it. Then you don't hear anything from him for a year, 2, 3 years. And then suddenly he's popped up in town again and he's opened a new restaurant, different theme, different cuisine, different style. And he's done everything literally from a fish and chips takeaway all the way through to a fine dining French cuisine type of style restaurant. And he simply builds the business to sell the business. That's what he does. Then he takes a year or 3, thinks out a new concept, and he doesn't have to work in that time because he's built up enough capital. And then he launches a new business, runs it for a couple of years, gets it up, makes it one of the best restaurants in town. All of these things, from the fish and chips to the fine dining, have all been one of the best restaurants in town. And then he sells it on because he's got the books to show people and to say to people, there's the money I'm making. If you want to make this money, give me so much money and the restaurant's yours. So his growth and harvesting strategy, he determines on day one. His growth and harvest strategy has built this business up to be the best, one of the best restaurants in town. Sell it. End of story. He's not thinking, lots of people think, no, one day I'm going to let my children inherit the business, or later on I'll take a partner and I'll take a backseat, and after a while I'll be the silent partner, but I'll keep my interest in the business. No, he's decided. He's selling the business. He's not married to it. He's selling it. And that is his business, his personal business model. And as I said, he's done this a couple of times and it works well for him. So there's different approaches that people will have, as long as you know what your approach is going to be, and as long as you understand what you're going to do. I promised you the business plan. So here we go. Here's the business plan. So we need to firstly look at, why do we have a business plan? Why is it important? When you're committing your ideas to paper, when you're writing all of this down, you get to understand the feasibility of the idea. You will find people that will write the business plan, and then when they get to that point, they'll abandon the idea while writing the business plan. Because in writing the business plan, in thinking through the details, they realize, no, the risk is too high. There's not big enough opportunity here to make money. The market isn't big enough. The product isn't feasible. There's a whole host of things that you can discover while writing the business plan. And if you speak to real entrepreneurs and people that understand the entrepreneurship journey, they're actually grateful that they abandoned the idea in the business plan phase. Because they say to you, I never risked any money. I never put money in. I don't think I would have made any money if I had put money into it. I probably just would have lost. The risk part would have won. But that's one of the reasons why we write a business plan, because it shows us, it forces us to think through the whole process. It forces us to say, is this a viable idea? It helps to ensure the best chance of success because you have thought about everything and you understand the business. You're not going to get confronted with things that happen and you've not thought about them. If you write a proper business plan, you will have thought through everything. It helps effective and efficient management. Now, effective and efficient sound like the same word, but it's two different ways. The one is doing the right thing, so doing what you're supposed to be doing. And the other one means doing things the right way. In other words, the one is doing the right thing and the other one is doing it in the best possible way. That's efficiency. Effective things is doing the right thing. You could use this to attract investors. So you could take your business plan and you can literally farm your business plan around. Go to people, say, look, I've got this business. Get them to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Say, I'm looking for an investor. This is how much money I'm looking for. Something like, if you've seen Shark Tank, I think it's called Shark Tank, the program where people invest in other people's business, something like that, but a bit less intimidating and less formal. And you can go around to investors, but you can also go to the banks and say to the banks, here's my business idea, this is my business plan, this is how much money I need. And as a matter of fact, you'll see later that it says in the plan how much money you need and what you're going to do with the money. It maps your future. It's almost a blueprint of what you're going to do. So when you finish writing the actual business plan, you don't have to think of, okay, so what do I do next? You know what you're going to do next. It's in the business plan. It helps you figure out how you can grow the business, how you can, what we talk about, scaling the business. In other words, taking the business from 1 shop to 2 shops to 10 shops. Not just from 1 shop to maybe a second branch and maybe a third. We talk about scaling. In other words, you want to be able to have an idea that's scalable, that you can exponentially make bigger, not just 1 shop at a time. It's your action plan. It tells you what to do. And lastly, it helps with the management of cash flow, because part of the business plan, you're going to look at all the money coming in and going out. You're going to look at where this money comes from, what happens to this money, what do we need money for, what are we going to do right at the beginning. In other words, what are we loaning money for? So we'll loan money up front. What are we going to do with that money? But what other financial needs do we have? And where does the cash for that come from? So we might loan some money to start the business up, but then we know by the third month we want to buy a bigger machine X, and that we're not going to do with a loan, because we don't want to owe the bank for the rest of our lives. That we're going to do the profits for the first 3 months, because we have a cash flow. And we know what our cash flow should be, and we're going to use that cash flow to buy that machine. It also tells you, the cash flow also tells you things like, when do you reach your break-even point? Break-even point is the point where the money, that is the point where you're not losing money, you're not making money. So the money that's coming in is equal to the money to your cost, right? And that's the point. So typically when a business starts, it'll lose money initially. And some businesses, especially businesses that have a large capital need to start up, will make a loss for years before it starts turning into a profit. But you'll be able to calculate that in 2 months, 6 months, a year, or however long it's going to take you to reach break-even point before you have a positive cash flow. Because that's part of what you need to know, because you need to have money to let the business continue for the period that the business is making a loss, while you are still busy gaining market share, while you're still busy gaining more clients and so on. So you've got to bargain for that, and you need to budget that into your cash flow, so that you know there's going to be a negative cash flow for the first 6 months, and the negative cash flow is going to be this amount of money, which means just to stand still, I need to find that amount of money from somewhere. So I need to have that in my overdraft account, must be part of the loan. And every month we're going to take X amount out of the loan and pay it into the business, just to keep the business level, just to keep the business going. And then after 6 months, we should start slowly seeing a return on investment. We should be seeing things going well. And after a year, we know we'll be able to cover all the costs out of the business, and we'll even have a little bit of profit on the side for the business. So that's the type of things that you're going to do in terms of your business plan. So now, what is in the business plan? What's the actual business plan? I keep saying it's going to do this, it's going to do that for you. Let's have a look at the details of the business plan. So you'll have a cover page, typical biographical details on there, name of the business, who are the owners, where is the business, how do you get hold of us, and who is the person to speak to in the business. It might be the owners if it's a smaller setup, but you might be saying, okay, look, I've put a team of 10 people together, and John is our financial person, and John is the person that's going to deal with the business plan, because we're using our business plan predominantly to get investors. You might also change the contact, because the contact plan that you're going to give to a bank, or the business plan, sorry, you might make slight changes. The business plan that goes to the bank might be different to the business plan that you're giving to potential clients, because your business plan for potential clients will have a lot less detail, but it'll still tell them how and what you're going to do. Then obviously there's a table of contents, just so that people can navigate through it with the relevant page numbers. Executive summary. So executive summary is a shortened version that gives an overview of the complete business plan. It should be something that's attractive, something that that grips the reader, tells them what this is about, so that they want to read the rest of the document. And here you will address the key things, such as opportunities. What is the opportunities in the market? How much growth potential is there? So how big can this thing get? Who are the various stakeholders? Who are the people with an interest in the business? What value will this business add? And how will we achieve market penetration? Market penetration simply means there's a market. In other words, this is the group of people that would be interested in our product. How do we get those people to buy our product? How do we convince them not to buy another product, but to buy our product? That's our what we call market penetration. And the idea is also, how many of the market, how much of the market are we going to take? Do we want to take the market? It's our market. We're going to take 100% of that market. We're putting competitors out of business, or are we saying, look, this product in this market is for the younger generation would be interested. Older established people are going to stick with their old product. They're not going to come for our new product. So if we look at the demographics, we see 20% of the market is younger than 25 for argument's sake, is 20% of that market. And we believe of that 20%, at least 15% will become our clients. So we see that our market penetration will be about 15% of the overall market. Then you do a short business history and team. How sometimes this might be a business that you've started on a small scale, you've run it out of your garage, and now you're getting at the point that you're formalizing the business. So you'll tell the story about the business. Where does the business come from? Why was the business started? Maybe it's something that you were interested in as a hobby, and it's grown to the point that where you not doing this as a hobby anymore because this has now actually become a business. I had a student years ago, must be about 10 years ago, when drones were just starting out. He got a drone for a Christmas or birthday present, and as you do, he crashed it on his first flight, and then found out how very expensive the rotors and the things are in South Africa. And he also found out that he could buy it much cheaper overseas and that he can import it. And he was clever. He needed, say, 2 rotors that he'd snapped in the crash. But he bought 4 rotors. And he found out what the other things are that are likely to break and bought some of that in. And he spoke to other people and very soon upgraded his drone to a much better drone and so on, and got involved in people that were flying drones at that stage. And then he figured out that everybody's got the same problem. They're struggling to get spare parts. And because he now had the experience of importing, he started importing those drone parts, and he ended up having a really good business because lots of people were buying from him. And at some stage, even the shops that were trading in drone parts were buying these spares from him rather than going through all the effort, because he made it easier for them. Because he imported it himself, they didn't have to import and go through all the drama, and they would buy it from him and then simply put extra on top of it and sell it onto the public. And that's how his business started. It started as part of his hobby, and he grew it from there. Also in this section, you would say, who are the key individuals who drive the business idea and who's going to drive the idea to success? So if you've put a team together, if this is a bigger business, I've got one of my, he's now an honors student with us. He was a 3rd year entrepreneurship student last year. He's part of a team that's planning to do a chemical factory outside of Cape Town. And they are already a team of, I think, 10 people that's working on this idea, because it's going to be a big thing. So they need to get all the HR, all the finances, all the manufacturing, all the engineering, all of that stuff sorted out up front. So they've got this team, and you'll also say who are the key individuals who are driving the idea and who are busy working on this idea. So you'd list them, and it'd almost be a curriculum vitae of those people that is included. Your environmental analysis. Now, remember, when we talk business and we talk environment, we're not talking the birds and the bees and the trees. We're talking what happens in the business environment, and you will learn when you do chapter 3, if you haven't done it already, that the business environment is the micro, the market, and the macro, or the internal environment, the market environment where you compete, and the macro environment, which is far out there, that is the great big bad world. So when we talk environmental analysis, we're talking the internal and external environments factors. So we're specifically looking at the market, right? What is happening in the market? Who is in the market? And what is the size, the potential market size? And then we're looking at those external factors, the politics, the economy, the socio-cultural, and the legislative factors that might have an impact on our business, and how those impacts will be negative or positive to the business. Vision and mission statement. gives us the core focus of the business. This is the future-facing things. This tells us where do we see the business in a couple of years? What is the great, big, audacious idea that we want to achieve? And what do we want to be known as? What is the core drivers of what we do? Our product and service plan. Now, this is typically going to be a product or service plan, but it may be both, because typically we're either selling a product or we're selling a service. But explain what your product is. It's simple. Tell the people what is the thing that you're selling. And then if there are other products in the market, you want to do a comparative analysis. If you've ever subscribed to a website or any one of those things, you know a little screen that pops up that says the free plan gives you all of this. The 10 Rand plan a month gives you this. The 20 Rand plan gives you this, and the 100 Rand plan gives you all of those. Right? You want to do something like that with a product. You want to say, our product has the following features, and our three competitors, this is the features that they have, and this is what we have that they don't have, and this is possibly what they have that we don't have. Remember, sometimes we're doing a product, we somehow are programmed to always think we're going to be the best product. Not everybody wants the best product. You may want to have a product that's covering the lower end of the market. So you're going to have less features, but the product's going to be half the price, right? So that's your marketing strategy and your marketing plan, which will come out in the next point that you're going to do. If you're doing a product and you can put visuals in and you show people what the product looks like, that's always a great idea. Sometimes the people will have technical drawings because the product itself hasn't been built yet. Your marketing plan, who's the target market? Who's going to buy this? So this is where you're going to say the target market are the people that don't have money. We're looking for that market. This product is designed for the people that want to pay less, that are not so concerned about quality and want a basic thing that can only do certain basic things. They don't want the top of the range singing and dancing version. They just want the thing that does the basic job. What is your approach to the target market? How are you going to get to the market? Is this something that you're going to advertise on national radio and television? Or is this something where you're going to have people walking from door to door, knocking on people's doors, trying to sell them this? Or is this something that's going to be a pop-up ad somewhere on the internet? Where does your product fit in? Where's your client base? How do you get to your client? And then you'll have monthly forecasts of what do you think you're going to sell, how many you're going to sell. If it's a seasonal product, right? Say, for example, you're doing bathing costumes. Obviously, leading into summer and during summer months, you will sell a lot more bathing costumes than in winter. And your sales forecast will reflect that, will show you that you're selling more things in certain times of the year. The operational plan. Now we're saying, well, we know how many products we want to sell, but where are those products going to come from? How are we going to get those products? How will the business produce those products? Or if you're a service, so say, for instance, you're a hotel or an insurance company, how will we provide the service to the customer? Fully based on the internet? Or is this a fully contact business? Is this a hybrid business? How does that work? Our financial plans, this is the key part, especially if you're doing it for investors or bankers. This is what they're going to read. They're going to scan through the rest and say, yes, it's interesting. Oh, it's a nice product. Oh, yes, there's definitely a market for that. What do the financials look like? And there are loads of costs that are going to be, that are coming your side. Product development costs. Typically with a product, you're going to have an idea, figure out, then you're going to build a prototype, test the prototype, maybe show the prototype to potential clients. They're going to give you feedback. You're going to redevelop the product. And you're going to have several iterations of that until you get to the point where you say, okay, this is my product. This is what I'm happy with. And you might actually end up with a product that you say, this is great, but this is not the one we're going to launch. We're going to launch 2 versions earlier. And then after a year, we'll then launch the next one, and a year later, we'll do a further upgrade. And by the time you get there, you're already going to have improved this product further than where you are now. The legal costs, you've got to start a company, you've got to determine the forms of ownership. You're probably going to have to do all types of legal documents in terms of contractors and people that you're going to buy from, your suppliers, etc. So you need to do all of that. You want to test your product, part of the product development. You want to take it out to clients and say to clients, listen here, how does this work? What does this look like? That costs money. Market research, finding out what the market looks like, who's going to buy the product, where they're going to buy the product, when do they buy the product, all of that you want to find out. So that means you need people to go out into the field and do the research for you. People cost money. Equipment. You just equipping an office. Go look at what a desk and a chair costs. It's going to be money. And if you're going for a bigger thing, there's a lot of money to be spent there. Salaries and then unforeseen costs. In any project, I've done a couple of renovation projects, and we normally, when we work at a budget for a renovation project, we're renovating a house to either rent it out or sell the house. We always put in 20% more than what we think it's going to cost, and we also increase the time with 20% because things happen. There's rain when there shouldn't be rain. There's load shedding when you didn't think there was going to be load shedding. There's bunches of stuff that can happen, and there's suddenly fuel prices go up or certain materials become more expensive. So in your financial plan, you always need to have that contingency in that financial plan to make sure you've taken cognizance of everything that can go wrong. Your risk analysis. For risk analysis, one of the tools that there's lots of Pestle and a lot of other tools, but the typical one to use is a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis is where you look at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. Strengths and weaknesses are inside your company, so you look at what are the things that you can do really, really well. Those are your strengths. What are the things that you struggle with? What are your weaknesses? Things that you need to work at. Then you look outside into the environment and you say, what opportunities do we see in the environment and what threats do we see? SWOT is a very basic tool, but it's a very powerful tool. I had one of my students come to me and say to me he's working for a small electronics firm. He's helping out after hours and weekends, but he really enjoys the working environment and he really enjoys working there. But he was a third-year student at the time. And he said, but the concern is that he knows a lot because he's been studying now for 3 years, but he doesn't know how to show the owner that he knows stuff and then hopefully get more involved in the business side. He said, because it's fine working behind the counter and selling stuff, but he wants to get involved in the business side because he wants to gain some experience. So I said to him, do a SWOT analysis. He said, no, SWOT analysis. I said, no. What does the owner know? Has the owner got a business background? He said, no. The owner's an electronics guy that's just, he worked out and he's got this, he opened a store. It's, he knows about electronics. He doesn't know about running. So I said to him, well, he probably doesn't know about SWOT analysis. What you do is you go to the owner, you say to him, you want to do a SWOT analysis. You explain to him what a SWOT analysis is, and you say to him, it's a task that I've given you in class. You must do it as an ICE task. So go do a SWOT analysis. So he said, okay, he'll try it. So we went to the owner, did this, and when the owner found out what he was doing, he said to him, okay, cool, do it, but come show it to me. I want to see this thing. And when the owner saw the SWOT analysis, he was amazed because he said to the student that he's always thought there must be something he can do, but he's never known what he can do. But this thing that gives him what's internal strengths and weaknesses and what is out there in terms of the opportunities and the threats is brilliant, right? Because now for the first time, he's got some kind of analysis of his business as well as the business environment, and he could use that to do a couple of things. And the student did eventually get a lot more involved. And I haven't spoken for the student for some time, but the last time I saw the student, he was basically a partner in the business, and with the intention that eventually he will buy the whole business and he'll take over the whole business. And that's from just a simple SWOT analysis. Then you've got to include your timelines of action. You've got to show what is your strategic implementation plan. What are you going to be doing? When are you going to be doing it? What are your objectives that you want to achieve? And by when do you want to achieve what objective? So in other words, for example, you'll have an objective about client growth and how many clients you want. By when will you have how many clients? What's the next target? How long will it take you to get that? How far before the next one is met? And then your marketing and production timelines. How much are you going to sell? How much are you going to produce? And obviously those two timelines run together. You can't sell things that you haven't produced, but you don't want to produce things that are going to sit on the shelf because that's capital. So if you've produced products and they're sitting on the shelf, it's cost you money because you've got money tied up in that product, and you want that product to be sold so that you can get the money back, so that we can buy more raw materials, so that we can manufacture more products, so that we can sell more products. I spoke about that last week in terms of that input transformation process, output process, and this is it in actual working. Okay, you write a conclusion. Basically, you make sure that you've kept everything simple. You state the facts. You remind people in the conclusion on what the product is about and what it can do and why it's wonderful. And you discuss a couple of the key highlights. When are you going to start turning profit? What's the size of the market, and how profitable can this business be? Appendixes, references and stuff in the back, any supporting documents. If you've got photographs to illustrate what the factory looks like or what the products look like or anything like that, you'll put it in there. Maybe put legal documents, something like showing that you're a registered company, or if you've got any patents or anything like that, showing the patents registration. If you already have contracts, you might already have a supply contract with people, you definitely include that, because that tells the investor, hey, these guys are already making money. They have already got people that want to buy this. And then if you have financial statements, you'll include those as well. Okay, the last section we're just going to look at is creating value through entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurs, one of the things they do is they create value. And the question is, how do entrepreneurs create value? Now, simply put, creating value means creating money, creating wealth. What an entrepreneur does is, as they have a product, so let's assume initially the entrepreneur hasn't got money, right? They make a product that costs them something. They sell that product for a certain profit. That profit is wealth that they have created. In other words, by selling the thing for more than what we've cost, that entrepreneur has created wealth for themselves because they have now got more money than they had when they started. So that's creating wealth. As you progress, you'll have to find creative ways of creating more wealth to add value to the products. Remember when I was talking about the prototypes of the products? I said you might decide not to release the final product right at the beginning. You might release one of the previous prototypes that's not as fully functional, and then release a better one and a better one, because that way you're adding value and you're probably going to push sales, because then you can, when you start advertising, you say it's now better than it was because it now can do the following things as well. That means you will create even more value because more people will buy it, and you might have people that bought the first one that says, no, I want the newer one, I want the better one. So by being innovative and creating these innovative products and selling them, they create wealth. And that wealth then does something else as well. There's another way in which they then create wealth. Because they're selling products and they're making products, they're creating jobs, right? So they need to have more people to come help them. Those people are paid a salary, right? So it creates wealth for that person because that person previously didn't have a job. So suddenly they're not just creating wealth for themselves, they're creating wealth in the economy because they're paying people salaries. But people take salaries and they spend their salaries. And by spending their salaries, they are meaning another shop getting a higher income. So if you've got 20 people that you employ off the streets and you pay them all a salary, and they all go and they spend their salaries in one place, that place suddenly has 20 more clients. So that person who owns that place is creating wealth because he's making more money than he previously made, right? And that's how an economy grows, by people making more money, because eventually that shop is also going to have to employ more people to take good care of the more clients that they have. And that's how entrepreneurs create wealth within the economy, by using their creative and innovative ideas to make money for themselves, but by making more money or creating wealth for themselves, they also create wealth for others. Guys, that's basically, oh yes, and the value of technology, sorry. So entrepreneurs use technology as a rule. It's a very important part of being an entrepreneur, because if you don't use technology to the utmost, you must understand your competitor will do it, right? So you need to use the technology that's available to you at the time to take your business processes and improve them as far as you can possibly. This, by using these business technologies that you have, that calculated risk that you have, you can bring the risk down, because the technologies will take care of things that might previously have been difficult to take care of, or you didn't know previously. And technology is also something that creates trends. For example, if you think about 3D printing. So 3D printing is a brilliant thing, because it creates a whole lot of new things that people can do. I just saw a advert today from somebody who's using 3D printing to print models, 3D models of children. So if you've got a nice action photo of your kid playing rugby, you can take it and they'll make a little statue for you. Or a wedding photograph, for example. They'll make a statue of the wedding couple in the correct colors, dress, all of that stuff, right? And that's using a trend, the 3D printing trend, to create a new business, because you are keeping up with technology as the business person. There's a whole list of things there: the internet, AI, robotics, networks, online advertising, mobile technology, all of that stuff. At current, if you look at just look at one of those, and that's AI. If you look at what people are using AI for. So I spoke to a guy the other day who is an entrepreneur, who's got his own business. And he said to me, his ChatGPT is just the thing for him, because he can speak to ChatGPT and ask for ideas and discuss his ideas with ChatGPT and get sensible answers. Another colleague of mine, or a guy that works for us sometimes, he spoke to me today. He has he subscribes to ChatGPT, so he's got the 4.5, the paid version. He's got a client. His background is in human resources. He's got a client, and one of the people that work for the client wants to do something in management, but he's not sure what, and so on. So when the guy's name is Alex, what he did is he went onto ChatGPT and he's created a 15-week management course for the guy. Now, Alex is a consultant, so he's getting paid for this. So he's got AI using ChatGPT to create a 15-week course for him that he's giving to these people, that they can do themselves. So that it tells them what they need to read, what they need to find out, what they need to research, and it gives a little assignment for each one of the weeks. And all Alex has got to do is he's got to get those little assignments in and give them some comments. So now I know from course developing a 15-week course is going to take you probably 2-3 months if you're doing it properly. He's done that in an hour. And he's charging them. It's billable. So he's charging them for the course. So that's why it's important for the entrepreneur to use new technology, because that can create new opportunities for them. Okay, I promise, now I'm finished. Ask me your questions. Are there any questions you want to ask me? Anything further that you want to know before we say goodnight? Okay. Please make sure that you go over this work in your textbook. Please go over this work using the outcomes that I mentioned right at the beginning. And if you are not sure about anything, if you get to a part that you don't understand, the recording of this will be made available, and go listen to it again in the recording. And then if you're still not sure, not happy, please remember to speak to your lecturer, and ask your lecturer to explain that detail for them. And if your lecturer is saying something different to me, say to them, "No, Carl said that, you're saying this, which one's right?" Check the textbook. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I might not have made a mistake. So yeah, but do speak to your lecturer. Kiara, I saw you were typing, but I'm not seeing the chat coming through to you. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, if that's it then I'm going to say good night to you. But please do some revision and go over this work. These two sessions, chapter 1 and chapter 2, should put you on track now. You should just about be in class finished with chapter 3 at this stage. So you guys should be fine. And all the best. Remember, you've got the first assignment is due in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So please make sure you do that and submit it in time. Thank you very much and good night.